Hey, welcome to another episode of the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers, your host and your friendly neighborhood astrologer. I've been at this now for 27 years. That's kind of crazy to think about. 3 decades. That's just wild. There's a lot of really kind of crappy information out there online about astrology, and it doesn't do us any favors. So like scientists read the same stupid blog posts, and it's funny because they get mad about bad science and then they believe all the bad astrology out there, and then they say astrology has no credence. Okay, whatever, dudes, you might want to actually study it. But anywho, we've got a lot going on right now. So much so that I'm doing a seminar on September 17th at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can go to the link in the description to sign up for that. If you've missed the live event, there's a recording available for purchase. Going over the astrology of the fall and winter heading into 2022. Giving you guys a heads up of how to prepare, because we've got some wild astrology, wild weather, logistical snafus, and supply chain. You're probably already noticing the supply chain. I've been talking about this all year long on TikTok and on the podcast. This isn't anything I haven't been talking about, but if you're new, welcome. Big thank you to all of my patrons for making this podcast possible. We'll do the patron shout out in this episode. But now we're going to look at what's just coming up, and actually what is right now. So if you've been having tech stuff go on, it's not the Mercury pre-shadow. It's Mercury square Pluto. Yeah. And it is Saturn and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. A lot of people are making false correlations to bad information, and I had one cheeky sod on TikTok go at me when I said pre-shadow isn't a thing, and they're like, well, what about void of course? So we're going to talk a little bit about void of course of the moon and what that actually is. Astrology has a lot of math in it, guys, and I know a lot of people don't like math, but it's about precision. That's what makes us good at forecasting. So there we go. I'm feeling a little sarcastic today, but I'm feeling better than I did on the last podcast because my website looks better than it did before. Oh my gosh, so this week is kind of crazy. We've got Monday with the full moon in Pisces. It's at 28 degrees. The next day is the Equinox, always an important day, the autumnal equinox. And then on the 22nd, we have Venus opposite Uranus. And I did a fun little astro alert on TikTok about that. I'll get that up in the astro alerts on the blog. Where you can really manifest some stuff pretty fast, but you don't want to try to manifest relationships. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Don't ever try to manifest relationships. It always kind of backfires. It's kind of like if you rub the lamp and you get the genie, there's the 3 questions, but you can't ask about certain things. So too is it when it comes to specific people. It's not a good idea for lots of reasons. And manipulating people is a bad idea. It's better to work on yourself. Work on yourself and you attract the right people and situations to you. I highly recommend it. It's something I have worked on my whole life. And when stuff shows up that is less than pleasant, take it as a cue that there's a little more work to do. It's not a blaming thing. It's just an acknowledgement of a need to calibrate yourself a little bit more. We're fine-tuned machines, and, if we're Ferraris and we're going to a Toyota shop, we're not going to get the right work done. So pay attention to your emotional states and your reactivity as well as your responsiveness. It's very important, especially in these times. So let's get on with this week. So right now we have Mercury square Pluto. Mercury is in Libra, and it is squaring off with Pluto in Capricorn. Mercury governs communications and logistics and transportation of goods and services and people. And so we're seeing a lot of kind of snafus in that department. Yesterday, TikTok had a fantabulous glitch. No, it was not the Mercury pre-shadow. The pre-shadow isn't a thing. It's ridiculous. I've never heard of it until the internet, like over the last 10 years, I would say. And that's because we had people who had just enough knowledge to be dangerous. Am I gatekeeping? Oh, well, no, I'm not. I'm trying to educate you. We don't have different ideas about this stuff, guys. It's about precision. Precision is important. We can use our intuition when it comes to interpretation, the meaning of the moment, of the precise moment. There's different layers and different qualities. Absolutely use your intuition then. But the calculations, those are precise and they're elegant. And I didn't like math any more than the next person when I got into astrology. And my mentor was fantastic and taught me very well and forced me to stop trying to intuit everything and do the astrology because I'm psychic AF. And anyway, I was like, I don't want to have to do the math, but you know what? Doing the math is what makes you really, really good. And there's nothing counterintuitive about using math. Math is itself an intuitive language. There is an elegance to precision, and that's something to keep in mind as we move towards the Pisces full moon. Yes, even as we move towards the Pisces full moon, we can think about precision. So we've got Mercury square Pluto, and we have Saturn and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius, and we are now less than a month out from those big boys going direct. And it's usually right after something stations or right before something stations that you start to, see a little bit more energy being expelled into the world. And that's where people kind of got the idea for the Mercury pre-shadow. But to be honest, it's not weeks ahead. When it comes to Mercury, the bigger the planet, the further out you might be able to start feeling some of those things. But it's on the day of the station that everything is felt, and felt hard. And that's why I'm doing the seminar, because Jupiter, let's see, we've got Pluto stationing direct on October 6th. We have Saturn stationing direct on October 8th, and we have Jupiter stationing direct on October 18th. And I have a beautiful hummingbird playing in the bougainvillea right in front of me, reminding me that amongst all of the energy, that there is joy to be had. It's a good reminder. It's a good reminder. It too is having a little bit of supply chain difficulties because, the flowers are pretty dry right now. There's a few it can feed from, but it doesn't have the cornucopia it had just a week or so ago. So it's important to prepare for this. We're going to be talking about this on the 17th in my workshop on how to prepare for what's coming up. Again, we have the full moon in Pisces, the full moon in Pisces. I think this is going to bring some weather. I'll be writing this up, so it's up on the website and in the Patreon. It's going to be a sizable moon. It's at 28 degrees of Pisces, so it's in the maturity of the sign. It's going to be intense, as only the ocean can be. Pisces rules the ocean. It's big, it's vast, it's a lot of energy. This idea that Pisces is passive is really a very patriarchal idea of the energy. Go on the ocean sometime and ask yourself how passive that water is. There's nothing weak in water, and it can be full of fury. We may see some very reactive people, very emotional with that big full moon. It's a harvest moon. It's a harvest moon. We're reaping what we've sown. Ask yourself, what did you plant? What did you plant in the new moon in Pisces back earlier in the year? What seeds did you sow? Because you're harvesting those. It's not a time to try to bring about new things. It's harvesting older ideas. And you don't want to do any releasing rituals until the moon begins to wane. So on the equinox, which is the next day, that's a good time to release. Gather things on the Monday of full moon. Gather things. I'll be writing about that on the blog and on the Patreon. If you're not an astro adventurer, why the hell not? We've got groups now on my website. If you're an astro adventurer, make sure you click the link for the group and you join us there. If you're a Patreon, get on Discord. Would love to have you there. Would love to have you there. The app is on the way. The app is on the way. We'll talk more about that later. I'm still waiting on some things. We've got Venus opposite Uranus on the 22nd. And that is a really intense time. We might see some financial movements, but it's a great time to manifest things you're passionate about. And I think we need to talk about passion and being impassioned and having big feelings again, because this is going to be a week of big feelings. And navigating those can be a challenge. We can be reactive or we can be responsive, and we always have a choice. I learned that when I had complex PTSD. I learned how to govern my reactivity. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. I had every excuse and reason and justification in the world to stay absolutely reactive. But man, it was worth learning how to be responsive and take control of my life. It really was. So we're going to talk about that in the next segment. All right. Big thanks to my patrons, as always. Big thanks to my patrons. Without you guys, this podcast doesn't happen. Huge shout out going on right now. We've got some new folks. We've got Scarlett Elizabeth. We've got Cynthia. We've got Stacy. We've got Kimberly. We've got Kara, Alexandra, Jacqueline, Megan, Kim Ivy, RBF Champion, Shelby, Tanya, Laura, MP, EMP, ZDZ, Tiffany, Emily, Christine, Emma, Adam, Christina, Lizzie, Catherine, Allie, Oriana, Neff, Barbara, Leilani, Shane, and Bryce. And we've got a new person named David as well in the Discord. Oh, it's been an exciting time in the Discord. I know some people don't like all of the chatter in there. We're working on getting some traffic lights in. Give me a minute. I'm off on Saturday. I'm going to see if I can learn about some bots. We've got a great conversation. People are debating on how to use that $75 off coupon. Guys, you can use it more than once, and you can use it on more than one reading. You can use it on the seminar. It's pretty cool. If you can't make it to the seminar tonight, don't worry, there's a recording, so you can still sign up for it. There'll be a recording of it. It is a live seminar. It's live. You get to meet with me. You can ask questions. We're going to talk about preparing for the fall and winter of 2021, 2022. And the closer we get to October, the more I see my warnings about the supply chain and the astrology of October are correct. We're talking about that in Discord a lot. Not a fear-based thing, just people helping each other out and letting people know what's up in their part of the world. We do have members from all over the world. So also answer a lot of questions in there. So if you're not a patron yet, join me. Patrons get perks. We're going to start having an spiritual entrepreneur program come up, and patrons will have first access to that. I'll be getting that up soon. And just so you don't forget, my dear patrons, it is Living by Luna and Cosmic Surfers on Sunday, September 19th. Alrighty. Once again, you guys make it possible for this podcast, and I am forever grateful. Thank you. If you're not a patron, click the link. It's really, really fun to be a patron. So I had a lot of people asking me about that Venus opposite Uranus, and they're like, I don't have passion, I don't have this, I don't know. And man, I get that. I used to be there. I used to hate people saying, find your passion. Like, I don't know, I like a lot of things. It was hard for me to know what my passion was, and it took a while. And finally I realized my passion was people. My passion was people. I love working with people. I love studying people. I love understanding the human condition. And anything that helped me do that fed into the passion. So a lot of what I love to do are skills that support my actual passion. We're not taught to think like that in our cultures and society. We're taught to be productive. We're taught to be on top of things. We're taught to make stuff and be useful instead of understanding our value. Venus is all about understanding your value. It's all about understanding how you interact with the rest of the world. It's how you attract things to you. If the law of attraction had a planet, it is Venus. It brings things to you. And don't poo-poo the law of attraction. I know it can sound like victim blaming and victim shaming, but it is not. It is not. It is all about creativity and bringing things towards yourself, and it will reflect where you're at. If you're in a bad mood and you trip over something and you hurt your toe and then you bang into something and you hit your head, and then the day cascades forward if you don't stop and redirect your attention, well, that's manifesting those events. It's not a blame thing. It's just a fact. Likewise, if you can stop, take pause, redirect, laugh at yourself for a minute, and not get swept up in the momentum of the no good, horrible, awful, rotten day, then you can respond in a different measure. You can turn the day around. You've had those days too, where everything seemed lost and then you turned it around. Honestly, it's the stories we tell ourselves, and as Mercury is square Pluto, those stories we tell ourselves are vitally important. And with Mercury in Libra, telling the stories that make you valuable are doubly so. You can use this as a power-up moment. You don't have to use it as a disempowering moment. And it is easy to do when we like to point the finger at people and blame people for what's going on in our lives. We absolutely have to take accountability for our thoughts, our own thoughts. It's very important. And yet we've been trained to use other people's thoughts, other people's ideas, other people's rhetoric and dogma instead of investigating our own, what's meaningful to us. Like I said, when I had PTSD, complex PTSD, there was a lot going on for a lot of good reasons. It was so easy to react, and it was so easy to blame circumstances and dirty, rotten scoundrels who'd hurt me over the years, and all of the situations that had repatterned, because you only can do what you know, right? There's no blame in this. I'm not blaming myself, and I'm not blaming anybody else. You can only do what you know. And retraining yourself can be a challenge, to say the least, to put it mildly. It can be grueling and excruciating. But when you learn how to stop and take pause and make a decision, you empower yourself. And Mercury square Pluto is making us all take stock of our thoughts and what they do, and how we can use them to either leverage or sink ourselves. So it's easy to blame the bad guys. It's easy to vilify people. It's easy to eat worms. And nobody loves me. Nobody cares. That story is going to fuck you over. You've got to love you. And if you don't know what love is, that's freaking hard. So instead of using the word love, I like to use the word acceptance. I accept myself. I accept I'm reactive. I accept that I have patterns that I would like to change, and I haven't changed them yet. When you can get to there, you're starting to neutralize. I don't care what kind of trauma you went through. It all produces cortisol. We can't use comparative trauma. It's ridiculous. One kind of trauma is not less than the other. If it produces cortisol in the brain, it's trauma, point blank. But if we let our amygdalas run the show, we have a very poor quality of life. And we spend a lot of time singing, "Nobody loves me. Nobody cares." Instead of, I love me. I love me. I accept myself. I accept all that I am. All that I am. Notice I'm not qualifying that. I'm not saying I'm not accepting myself because I have to. I'm not accepting myself because. There's no because. There's no because. It took years to get here. But it doesn't have to take you years. You know, I was working on modalities while other people were working on modalities. There was a ton of information starting to come out when I was at that last leg of a very long healing journey. Yes, I used astrology to shape my consciousness, and I used a hell of a lot of other techniques to physically change my reactivity. One of those was paying very, very close attention to my body postures. If my hands were clenched, I opened my hands. If I was pressing my legs into the floor, which by God, I used to do that. You'd think I'd have a hole in the floor from the pressure of my legs going into that floor. I would relax the various parts of my body that were tense. I made sure I got acupuncture and massage and did aromatherapy. I did whatever it took to feel a little bit better. And each time I felt a little bit better, it built on that. And when we talk about law of attraction in Venus, that's what we're talking about. I was also working with my Saturn, because Saturn, yes, it rules restriction, but it also rules discipline and structure. So Saturn isn't always the bad guy. We have consequences to our actions. When we are really reactive, there's a there's a kickback from that. There's a kickback from that. And so you want to understand that even if you've had a horrible day, you have a choice. You have a choice. You always have a choice in your reactions. And I know that can piss people off. It pissed me off when I was younger and I heard that you have a choice. It didn't feel like I had a choice. I'd get swept up in the moment. I'd get swept up in the feelings. But when I learned I had a choice and I really got it, I did everything it took to be responsive, and my quality of life vastly improved. It also meant I had to take responsibility for myself. And it meant I had to own up to my reactivity. I had to own up to myself and be honest that, you know what? Yes, I was abused as a child. And yes, I was in a domestic violence relationship as a young woman. And yes, I had crappy relationships going forward. But in that moment, I wasn't in any of those things, and I was able to be responsible for myself. It was pretty simple. And I could choose differently. Whether that choice was comfortable or uncomfortable was another story. I dug myself a pretty deep hole. I was in a relationship I wasn't happy about. It wasn't inherently abusive, at least to the outside. But I jumped from the fire to the frying pan. At least this one was on a low simmer. It wasn't on high heat. And I undid it. And I faced consequences. Anytime you change, other people have to change around you, or they spin out of the relationship. That's why Venus opposite Uranus is a great time to banish people. If you want to banish people out of your life and you happen to be a witchy poo, that's a great day for that. Use whatever vanishing spell you like. You can do it all day, no specific time. Powerful day for that. Now, if you want to bring things in, I don't suggest people. I do suggest feeling deep into what you love and bringing that towards you. And the way you do that is you feel what it's like to have it. So it's not the $20,000 or the $1 million or the lottery ticket or whatever that is. It is feeling into it as if you're living in the space you want to live in. It's feeling the ease of not having to worry about paying your bills. It's feeling that sense of peace when you know you wake up and you're going to be able to have whatever you want to eat, be able to write any check or pay any bill. The feeling of it. You need to be clear about what you want and what it gives you. That's how you attract things in. If you're vague, I want abundance, well, what are you going to get abundantly? Because you can have an abundance of stress. You see, you need to be clear about what it is you really want. For me, it's peace on the inside. I love feeling peaceful. I love that easy flow. I love being available to friends and family. I love having deep connections. I love the feeling where I know I've accomplished something. I love that sense of accomplishment. I love that sense and feeling in my body of knowing I've made a difference. And the wind picks up and embraces during this. I love the feeling of the wind on me. I love the feeling of being at ease in my body. I love being comfortable with myself, and I love that I love myself. It was a long road to get here. It wasn't easy. I just didn't wake up one day and voila. It was step by step by grueling steps some days. Learning to embrace myself, learning to back off myself and not expect as much out of me. Not sitting and going, why did it take me so long? Beating yourself up doesn't do you any good, and it gets in the way of bringing the things you want to you. Okay? There's good things on the way. Every time there is a snafu or a hiccup, there are good things on the way. And when you can know that, and you know it all the way through, that's where things happen. That's where the magic is when you know. The truth is, when something is uncomfortable, good things are on the way. You're growing. Growing can be uncomfortable. When you're expanding, it can be uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a sign of more bad things to come. It means you're growing. All right, so the full moon on Monday, September 20th, is in Pisces, and this is a time to open up to some magic. It's a very magical week next week. It will be intense. I know there's a lot of people out there who make magic bippity boppity boo, and some people make it sound terrifying. It's kind of in between. There's magic every freaking day. Every freaking day. What gets me is how people only want the big stuff to be magic, but there's little synchronicities every single day. And it would be a great day to be aware of what's lining up, those synchronicities. So if you see like repetitive numbers, some people call them angel numbers. I call them repetitive numbers. They're number sequences. I unpacked my dogma a long time ago. I see us as connected at the atomic level, at the cosmic level. We're all divine sparks of creation. It's up to you what you believe. I don't care what you believe as long as you know why you believe it. And if you're just believing it because somebody has said so and it kind of triggers off an old belief that you picked up from somewhere, whether it was the media or your family or culture, it isn't that belief is wrong, but if you don't deliberately believe it, then you're going on a default program. And if you can be deliberate, well, that's where the real magic happens, is being deliberate. And that's what we've got with this full moon. Pisces is powerful. Pisces is big energy. It doesn't have a lot of boundaries, though, and it can be easy to miss because it's like a mist or a fog or the ocean. It's powerful. It's powerful. Pisces rules everything from natural gas to viruses. Yeah, pay attention to that. To viruses, to faith, our connection with the unseen. It's where we feel the energy running through our hands, but we couldn't prove it if we tried. Maybe our hands get a little hot. It's the feeling of champagne bubbles running through our body. It's that knowing, that feeling where you know. It's our dreams. There will be very intense dreams Monday night in the U.S. It could be in the morning in the Eastern Hemisphere when the full moon is, and there could be wild weather. We are approaching the equinox, and a full moon right before the equinox says there's going to be some wild weather. Big waves, big storms, big seas. I'd be looking at the South Pacific for that one. There's a lot happening in this world, and it's easy to get overwhelmed, and that happens with the Pisces moon as well. So you can ask for clarity on this moon. Ask for clarity, because you can dispel the confusion and dispel the fog on this full moon. Believe it or not, you really can. You can be deliberate. I'll be getting the astro alert up for this full moon ahead of Monday, ahead of the full moon. I actually have tomorrow off. Yep, I arranged some time off. I'm still going to be writing and doing stuff, but time off from teaching or reading to recalibrate myself before the full moon. There's a lot happening in this world, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by it and feel like you're drowning in a sea of emotions. Just remember what are yours and what are other people's. If you are an empath, you don't have to feel everybody else's feelings. You don't. I know, it's always funny because people will assume that I've always been this way. But as a child, my mom had a hard time taking me into crowded spaces because I would melt down. As a small toddler, I would say, people feel too loud, Mommy. They feel too loud, because I could feel everything. And it took a long time to learn how to control that. I'm still not a huge fan of big spaces, like really crowded. Like you would not see me at something like Lollapalooza or, a crowded bar, things like that. I'm not fond of because I have to work too hard to filter. And I don't like the chaos of it either. You get people in groups and you have mass consciousness take over. Most people are not deliberate in their thinking enough not to be swayed by the group energy. And yet an individual can have such an impact on the group. It's amazing. When I choose to go out into crowded spaces, I'm exceptionally deliberate, and I've watched my own demeanor change the demeanor of a crowd. When I'm really on point, I have to be super deliberate though. I'm like on purpose. It's things I teach and mentor in private because it takes a lot of work. Sometimes people think we're gatekeeping, and what it is it's more like any profession. If I've learned all of this stuff, then you want me to teach you, it's more like, well, I need an energy exchange. That's just part of how this works. And it took me a long time to be okay with that, to be okay with the energy exchange. By the way, if you are a reader, if you are if you're a spiritual healer, you can charge. You're not going to lose your gifts. That was a way to disenfranchise people. That was a way to martyr ourselves. That's something else with that full moon. Let go of martyrdom. Let go of self-sacrifice. I know I'm going to. That's one of the things that just doesn't work for me, is that whole martyrdom thing. That's kind of BS. Not a fan. Not a fan. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. So we can and do grow. We can and do heal. We can and do deliberate response to the world when we try. And yes, I know it's hard. Yes, I do. I know. I didn't do this overnight. But you can do it faster than I did, because there's now momentum behind it. I've seen young people who only took a couple of years to heal what took me 25, 30 years to get. I'm not jealous, and I don't even resent it. I'm thrilled they don't have to take the time I took to heal. And if you're my age or older or just younger, it won't have to take you that long either. It does take dedication. It takes deliberation. And you can do it. But you have to want to. You have to have the desire for peace inside of you. For me, it was peace at all costs. That's what I needed. And that's what I wrestled with inside of myself for a very long time. So with this full moon, Instead of worrying about manifesting money, instead of worrying about manifesting a person, manifest clarity, because that's going to get you everything else. Manifest decision. Pay attention to synchronicities. And when you see those numbers, check your thoughts. What were you thinking? That's what I do. When I see, 111 or a repetitive number of any kind, I know, like 3322. I check my thoughts because I see it as a way to confirm that there's something that I'm doing that's leading me right where I need to be. You can't know it all. You can't plan it out and map it out perfect. And that's something else the Pisces full moon is going to show. That sometimes there's something better than we thought could happen. Sometimes there's an outcome that seems almost miraculous. Don't expect it to be shiny or big or in your face. It might be, but it could be something small. It could be something that seems inconsequential at the time. It could be a whisper or an inkling. Pay attention to it. Most of the time, our minds are so busy that we miss the little things that lead to the big things. And it's always the little things that add up to the big things. I really hope you have an amazing full moon, because it is made of magic. So what am I going to be talking about at the seminar this Friday, September 17th? What am I going to be talking about in the seminar? Well, it's how to prepare for the end of 2021 and early 2022. We've got a lot happening this fall. Including at the beginning of winter as well. So we've got the big boy planets stationing direct. We've got Pluto, then Saturn, then Jupiter in October. We've got multiple other things going on, like Mercury is going to be squaring off with Pluto through early October, and then again once it stations direct into November. So, once it moves through the shadow, and then it's going to pick back up and square Pluto in November again, which kind of sucks. Because that Mercury square Pluto is a powerful thing. All those people freaking out about Mercury retrograde. And I'm like, that is the least of our problems. And then we have the final Saturn-Uranus square of 2021. And that is on December 24th. If I was in Texas, I'd be taking care of my winter prep now. Especially on staying warm. That's really, really important. And then we have Uranus stationing direct on January 18th. I know I said January 1st, but that is because the site I was using for ephemeral information is off. I'm not going to use that site anymore. I will just hand calculate everything on my software, because then I know it's accurate. I might look at my ephemeris too. I keep a book ephemeris, and ephemeris is basically all the planetary positions, and I have one from the year 2000 to 2100 in case we have a long-term issue with the planet, with the internet, so I can hand calculate things. I am not wishing that would happen. I got it just in case, on the off chance. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we might have some short-term disruptions, but I don't think we're going to lose our tech. I just don't. I'm not a doom and gloomer. I'm not an end-of-the-world person, but I do see that we're in for a bumpy ride, and I do see we're in for massive systemic change. I've been saying it for years, and that means there's going to be some interruptions to things. Freaking out about it doesn't do any good. You want to prepare for things so that you can meet what comes up. That's magic, too. A great magician is prepared. A great magician is prepared. We're not here for, things to be easy always, but we can make them easier. And being prepared is one of those things. Better be prepared than not prepared, in my opinion. And if you end up with extra food, you can give it to a food pantry. There's a lot of people who are going to need it. But we're going to see a lot of social movements, labor movements, and it's going to be a tumultuous year in 2022. I will do an entire episode on the U.S. Constitution, my friends, because that's what's going to be challenged in April. But I'm not going to cover that in the seminar. I think we're just going to kind of go into January, maybe February. I'm going to be mostly talking about this fall and into January because it's a lot. We only have 2 hours. So I hope to see you tonight. Use the $75 off coupon. You can use that more than once for more than one thing. I don't care. You're not taking advantage of me. I put it out there. So have fun with it. It's good until September 24th. It's good until September 24th. See you in the seminar. I'm excited about it.